explain how this could happen, we have to go back to 2 days ago, day 2 leading up to the Ophilus Hall incident. His archery skills were now well honed after he had survived in the forest for some time, and now he was seen in his hunting session. He was not talented in combat skills, so every time he went hunting, he forced himself to use a crossbow, but even after a semester and half a vacation, his proficiency in crossbow-related skills remained stagnant, especially recently. Around his residence, there were sometimes some visitors. He could only resign himself to that. The number of people who knew that he lived in the North Forest seemed to be increasing. Among the visitors he often met, there were 3 most important people. Visitor A was a genius magician, and her visiting hours were very random. She also often bothered him regarding the design of his cabin, such as adding a back door and so on. But Ed ignored her and quickly kicked her out, but she didn't give up so easily. She continued to pester him about the cabin design. She was very enthusiastic when talking about this. Ed just felt that Visitor A was very unpredictable, unlike Visitor A. Visitor B was someone he was quite welcoming. She was a second-year top-ranked student and a fairly reliable spirit sorcerer. She also sometimes brought him things every time she visited, and often helped him with his homework. He didn't mind her frequent visits and welcomed her without any inconvenience. This spirit sorcerer came every day, chatting with the spirits or helping with small things. Ed was very grateful for being greatly helped by her presence. Ed also praised her for doing a good job, but Janica immediately turned her face away while blushing. Ed, who didn't know her true feelings, could only be surprised to see that. Sometimes she was quite easy to understand, but sometimes there were parts that were difficult to understand about her. She even once asked how often Lucy came to his residence with a scary look. Even so, she was still an important visitor, and the main reason why he explained all this was because Visitor C. When it was night time with the moon shining so beautifully above the sky, she visited his residence accompanied by a maid. In this world, she was known as the Golden Daughter. She was the mastermind behind the scenes of Act 2. She was probably trying to gather useful people to take control of the Ophilus Hall, but this time, Ed really didn't want to get involved, so he decided to refuse everything she offered. If he didn't get involved, everything would go according to the scenario. At least that's what Ed thought at the moment, until he heard from Lortel that Tote was unconscious. Ed was surprised why this was not going according to the scenario. He then asked why Tote fell unconscious. He immediately told Lortel to explain it in detail. Lortel was quite surprised when she saw the sudden change in his attitude. Originally Tote picked a fight with Taylor, but he was supposed to get beaten just enough by Taylor, because he was just showing his disbelief in Taylor defeating Glaskin. Everyone in the school knew that Taylor was beaten by Lucy with 1 blow, but for some reason, Tote then insulted Taylor by saying that he was even worse than that insect Ed Roth Taylor. And Zix, who heard that, immediately hit him hard in the face, which caused him to fall unconscious. Zix was very angry when he heard him insult Ed. Alvira, who saw the incident, said this was the first time she had seen Zix this angry before. Lortel could only sigh when telling that. She couldn't believe someone who was so emotional. She then assured Ed that his task was not difficult. He just needs to take this key from Ellis and get into the Ophilus Hall, then open the door when the low-ranking students are gathering in front of the Ophilus Hall. Hearing that, Ed then asked, why did she choose him when there are many people who can also do that? It's because she can't trust all of them, even if she offered them a lot of money. There is no guarantee that they will leak the truth to the Academy's internal investigators after this incident. If they leaked that Lortel from the first year was the mastermind behind all this, then her position would be threatened, so she couldn't trust them. Hearing that, Ed at that time realized that the reason Lortel asked for his help was because of his already bad reputation. Lortel then reassured him. Didn't he want revenge after being expelled from the Ophilus Hall? But Ed said that he didn't really want to do that, but even so, he would still listen to her offer. Ed just felt he had to do it in moderation. Lortel smiled at that. She then offered 20 gold coins, and Ed agreed to that. He thought, before the story went further astray, he just needed to reset everything. Day 1 to the Ophilus Hall incident. while studying, Ed then thought about the Ophilus Hall incident scenario. The Ophilus Hall possession incident occurred before the Sage's Scroll contest began, Lortel's ploy to drive the Academy's finances into complete madness, so this was like a stepping episode. If the scenario went as it should, Lortel, who succeeds in this conspiracy, will form an independent interest group within the Academy called Merchantry, thus creating a structure that rivals Princess Phenia's Student Association, the Idealistic Student Association and the Realistic Merchantry. The most important thing is, whoever Taylor chooses will ultimately determine who the winning side is. So Ed decided to observe and join the side that seemed to be winning. He also needed to survive. The weather outside was raining, and Janica, who was visiting here, got rained on. She also felt that it would be better to go back to the dormitory. She originally thought that the rain would stop today. She felt that Ed must be difficult. She could come and go like she was camping, but he had to be here even in rainy weather like today. Hearing that, Ed said that he was just getting used to living here. Now that the vacation was almost over, it was time for Janica to move out of Ophilus Hall. She never thought that the size of Dex Hall was so small. She needed to throw away a lot of things, so she offered it to Ed. If he needed anything, just tell her. He must need a lot of things. Ed didn't deny it. Janica said she had extra blankets, pillows, lanterns, and so on, as well as various other necessities and consumables, so she felt it was a pity to throw away these items, and throwing them away was troublesome. She also couldn't bring the furniture because it belonged to the Ophilus Hall. Janica was very enthusiastic when she wanted to help him, and Ed happily accepted. Janica was happy to hear that, and said she would bring it all when the new semester started. Their attention was then distracted when they saw Lucy, who was standing still on the roof with the rain pattering all over her body. Janica then asked if she often did that. Ed replied, sometimes. Lucy's extraordinarily strong powers didn't come free of cost for her. She lived her life running away using her laziness as an excuse. No matter how many screws she had loose, she couldn't help but reflect on her life on rainy days like this one. Ed said she liked to do things like that when it rained. He told Janica not to think about it too much. He didn't really care either. Janica was very happy when she saw his indifferent attitude towards Lucy. Ed then suddenly called Janica. Janica was then confused by that. Come to think of it, she's still inside Ophilus Hall. When the Ophilus Hall gets occupied, protection runes will activate on a large scale, and lock all students inside their rooms. Janica would have no trouble escaping from there on her own, but Ed then said that he wanted to ask for her help. Janica then asked what it was. Ed then asked her, tomorrow night around 9 o'clock. Could she go out to the rose garden in front of the Ophilus Hall? Janica was initially confused to hear that, but she then misunderstood when she heard the word rose garden. Ed did not immediately explain the specific reason, and would tell her later. He could not think of a way to explain it. Just in case, he had to first get Janica out of the Ophilus Hall, and go somewhere not too far away, where she could avoid the storm. Janica then accepted that. With a heart full of joy, Janica then said goodbye and left under the patter of rain. Ed could only be silent to see that. He could only exhale. The rain would probably only stop during the school reopening ceremony in the morning. At that time, they would be able to see clear skies after a long time. After that, this forest will also definitely be filled with the scent of autumn, and this long vacation will finally come to an end. Day 0 towards the Ophilus Hall incident. At exactly 9 p.m., inside the Ophilus Hall, Zix was seen practicing hard. Even so, he felt that his practice was still lacking. He also felt that he should avoid reacting emotionally as much as possible. He did not expect Aika to be that angry. He then ended his training session, but he was then surprised when he looked out the window. There was a mysterious figure wrapped in a cloak running towards the Ophilus Hall under the patter of rain. That figure was Ed. When he went inside, he was then guided by a maid. He asked what about the other maids. The maid replied, except for the main staff, most of them are gathered in the conference room. The head maid called them to gather to discuss important matters. The plan is to storm them there and block the entrance, since the person in command have been bribed. Ed feels that the plan will go smoothly. The maid also said that the item he mentioned earlier has been prepared. She put it in the corner. Ed thanked her for that. All the preparations were done, and the incident of controlling the Ophilus Hall finally began. The lower-ranked students were very excited in voicing their opinions. They both held a torch which made the atmosphere even more unfavorable. They said that they could no longer stand this kind of treatment, and demanded the academy to uphold equality in learning. This is the land of learning, Will Rain also loudly said. Respond to our voice. And when the students were about to storm in forcefully, they were then shocked and they saw the door suddenly opened from the inside. Not wasting this opportunity, they then jointly entered to take control of the Ophilus Hall. Will Rain then thanked the person who opened the door to them. That person was Ed. He had also kept a maid. He then half-heartedly said that he had long approved of the words he had been saying. Of course, he used to live luxuriously in Ophilus Hall, but only after being expelled did he realize how fortunate his life was. Will Rain's body shook violently when he heard his praise. He was deeply touched to hear that. He then blamed himself for judging Ed after hearing some rumors. He just found out that he was someone so wise. He really had played a big role today. Ed just said that it was all this is thanks to him and immediately told him to leave. Will Rain then said that he would rely on him to take care of this place. Will Rain is the one who will bear all this. He can only apologize, and can only encourage him. He doesn't need to chase after the maids who escaped. Right now, the main maids are likely to report that they are trapped in the conference room. The head maid Alice, a protection magic circle expert, is under Lortel's control. With the activation of the protection magic circle, the protection magic circle that was supposed to be a protection for the students, instead turned to imprison the students. The students could only wonder what was really going on outside, if things would get better if they waited. Everything was going according to the scenario, and the mastermind who arranged all this, Lortel, then came and praised him. Everything was going more perfectly than she thought. She felt that she had made the right decision to trust and leave it to him, and the mastermind had now stepped onto the stage. Lortel visited him under the heavy patter of rain. It caused her socks to get wet, which was also the reason why she hated rainy days. Ed then asked her if she had been watching the situation from outside. Lortel only smiled slightly at the question as she walked closer to him. She then replied, "Once the academy staff started to interfere, the situation will be quickly obstructed, so we need to carry out our duties before that happens." Ed also thought like that and encouraged her. Although she felt this was a bit sudden, Lortel then asked him, had he ever killed someone? Ed was silent for a moment hearing that. He then replied no. Or rather not yet. Lortel then said that she had too, while chuckling, but she had often done similar things, because she had to survive. In order to survive, she stepped on the lives of others, and stabbed them in the back so that she would not be betrayed. She had no choice but to do so, and she had lived to forgive herself. But really, that was just self-justification. Golden Daughter Lortel's name was made like this. The fact that she did not deserve sympathy was something she realized. More than anything else, that was why, overwhelmed, she then asked, would he be willing to sympathize with someone like her? She was looking for someone similar. The feeling of loneliness came to both good and bad people. In order to get out of this loneliness, she was forced to look for someone who also entered the mud. Only by finding someone who was willing to sink with her to the bottom of the swamp could she possibly be saved. Of course Ed felt that person was not him. Ed then replied no. She had to take responsibility for her own decision. Lortel was silent for a moment hearing that. She then smiled slightly and said, "Stupidly I said something out of context." She then said that she had to go and carry out her duties. There was not much time. Ed could only stare at her who was now slowly walking away. He then could only sigh. Ed knew Lortel would now discuss the plan and what the next task would be with Alice. After causing the Ophilus Hall protection magic circle to rage and handing over control of the magic circle to Will Rain, the low-ranked student representative, That way, Will Rain, as the representative of the low-ranked students protected by all sorts of defensive magic spread throughout Awfulus Hall, would become the boss of the fourth floor, a scenario to subdue Will Rain's restlessness in the midst of the endlessly raging magic circle. Now, he just needed to sit tight and wait for Taylor to break in. If he wasted even a little time and lost, Taylor would rise to the second floor quickly. Getting hit a few times or getting injured during the game might happen, but it was a necessary sacrifice. In the Rose Garden, Janica was surprised to see a carriage coming this late. She felt like someone important had come. She wondered if she and Ed were even allowed to be here. Janica had been in the Rose Garden for some time according to Ed's directions. She also felt that Ed didn't know about the golden carriage. Ed had left her a note. He said that he needed to leave for a while because of some sudden business and asked her to wait for a while. Janica, who read that, then wondered if he was preparing something special. She was really looking forward to it. No matter whether it was the golden carriage or anything else, Janica would never leave the gazebo in the Rose Garden, no matter what, because for 3 days she had been thinking and curious about what story Ed wanted to tell. While feeling restless, she continued to listen to Ed's news from Marilda. Based on the reports from the spirits, Janica knew that not only Lucy, but also Princess Phineas, Belle Maya, Zix, and even Lortel were seen visiting Ed's residence. Ironically, the fact that most of them were female students made her heart hurt even more. So she would wait for Ed no matter how long it was. While waiting for the arrival of her sweetheart, Janica then looked at whether her appearance was suitable with her iris flower hairpin, but she then felt that the Cosmos hairpin must be more beautiful. She paused for a moment after realizing that, then decided to return to the Awfulus Hall to change her hairpin, and she headed to the Awfulus Hall under the patter of rain. There were 3 figures now standing in front of the Awfulus Hall. They were Taylor, Isla, and Elvira. Isla then wondered if entering the Awfulus Hall was really the right decision. Elvira was very unhappy with her indecision. She had spread very expensive herbs in her room. Even so, Isla felt that maybe it was better for them to wait for the academy staff to handle it. Elvira certainly did not agree with that. If the herbs were not collected in time and preserved with magic, their properties would change. Such a small difference could change the results of the experiment. They certainly knew what she meant, right? Taylor, who saw that, felt worried, and immediately asked Isla to stop Elvira, who wanted to enter the Awfulus Hall alone. Isla could only laugh unwillingly at that. She then suggested, what if they just let her? Elvira was the leader of the alchemy faculty, so she felt she could definitely be alone. But what Taylor meant was not that. It was not Elvira who was in danger, but the lower-ranked students. He was worried that Elvira would go crazy and spray whatever reagents were in her hands. Hearing that, they then together tried to stop Elvira, but it was useless. Elvira then told them to stop talking, and invited the 2 of them to break through with her to her room on the 4th floor. Isla then asked, so we just need to go to your room? We don't need to do anything else? Elvira said yes, as long as the herbs are safe. If there are people blocking the way, we have to break through. And when Elvira forcefully broke down the door, she was then surprised when she saw who was inside. Ed was sitting as if he was waiting for them. Taylor then asked why he was in the Awfulus Hall, and Elvira seriously looked at him. She then analyzed the situation, the traces of a group of students passing by, a carelessly placed cupboard, and its position with its back to the stairs. Based on all these things, she came to a conclusion. With a faint smile, she found this interesting. She didn't expect this. She then asked, did he want to stop them? Ed didn't deny it, and said that they couldn't go through here. Elvira found this interesting. But did he think he could stop her if she said she was going to break through? She did hear from Zix that Ed had a high magic proficiency, but what he mastered was only basic magic. On the other hand, they had a capable swordsman, a magician who could use magic at the level of a typical first-year student, and an alchemist who showed the best ability this year. She didn't think the 3 of them would lose to Ed. Taylor then asked what his purpose was. He also told him to tell them what happened upstairs right away. Ed just stayed silent hearing that. Seeing his silence, Taylor then decided to immediately rush to attack and force him to talk. Seeing Taylor, who rushed towards him, Ed then threw a chair, but his throw was easily dispelled by Taylor. Elvira looked at their battle and seriously analyzed it. Judging from the flow of the mana, it was just basic magic. Because he was a magician, Elvira felt that Ed must be targeting Taylor, who was good at close combat, but she was then surprised when she saw Ed instead throwing the wind blade upwards. It then broke the chain that supported the chandelier in the sky. Taylor could only stare blankly at the chandelier that was about to fall on him, until finally the chandelier fell, which then caused a devastating effect. But fortunately Taylor could avoid it quickly. The students in the Ophilus Hall also heard and were surprised by the sound. Clebius also anxiously asked what happened outside. Taylor then worried when he saw Isla, who fell. He then told Taylor not to worry, she only fell because of the shock earlier. Taylor then asked about Elvira's condition. Elvira told him not to worry about her. Their view was a little blurry because the impact of the chandelier's fall caused dust to fly, and a wind blade then came towards Elvira, which then cut her hair. She was then very surprised by that. The wind blade also cut the shoulder strap of her bag, which made her bag fall. She felt a little panicked at this time and realized that Ed was really serious. She was also sure that something was happening above, and when the flying dust slightly disappeared, Ed, who had been in front of them, suddenly disappeared. Elvira then glanced at her fallen bag, which contained potions that were now scattered on the floor. She then tried to pick up the potions, but Ed then recited, "Ignition." And a burning fire suddenly burned the entire room where they were. The battlefield was set up, so naturally, almost like water flowing. Elvira realized the seriousness of the situation they were now facing. Ed's decision-making was very agile and accurate. She then blamed Zix for not telling them the details about Ed completely. This man not only had a high magic proficiency. Burning field had now separated the two of them. Elvira also became unable to take her potions. Their core power was in her being the head of the alchemy faculty. But the most crucial weakness of the alchemy faculty was, without relying on magic tools or potions, their direct combat ability was almost non-existent. Usually, alchemy faculty members wear emergency magic tools in the form of rings or necklaces to be on guard. But she disdains carrying such things. She feels that geniuses don't seem to need such things, because it is also troublesome. She also wondered, could it be? That guy has thought so far. He deliberately caused the candles to fall, and created a wall of fire shortly after, to target her bag, but she immediately denied her guess, because she thought he should be targeting the main bag, not the rope. Then, she also didn't think he could think that far, because he was just a mere Ed Roth Taylor. He then took out a blue pearl-like object. He still had a card that he hadn't taken out. He then slammed the pearl on the floor, which then turned it into a winged rabbit. She then drew a magic circle on the rabbit's back, applying fire resistance and berserk. Then, reinforced, right after that, the rabbit's size suddenly grew to more than twice her body size. While Elvira was taking out her card to get out of the situation, Isla was still worried about the situation that befell them. She then cast a spell to extinguish the fire, but a wind blade suddenly attacked towards her, which also destroyed the spell she cast. Isla could only frantically scream seeing that, but fortunately, the wind blade was immediately parried by Taylor before it could hit her. Taylor then worriedly asked her to hold on. Isla immediately broke out in a cold sweat because she felt that she was about to meet her death. Isla was indeed confident in her knowledge of magic, but her combat ability was only average even among first-year students who had just learned basic magic. With Ed blatantly targeting Isla, he couldn't even get close to him. Not only that, he and Isla even became difficult to even move. Elvira then suddenly called him and asked, "You can beat him if we shorten the distance to him, right?" Taylor was then confused when he heard the question. But Elvira didn't explain it directly and ordered her summoned rabbit to immediately attack towards Ed. Seeing that, Taylor then replied, "It's not about whether he can or not, he has to do it." Elvira liked his enthusiasm. She then protected herself with a cloak and immediately lunged towards the flames. Isla then felt worried for her when she saw it, even though it made her cloak burn. But it made her able to get to where her potions fell earlier. She was very happy because she could meet her favorite potions again. As for Ed, when he saw the big rabbit coming towards him, he then once again cast Wind Blade, but his target was not the rabbit, but Elvira, who was currently busy picking up her potions. He then threw his attack at her, but there was no panic on Elvira's face when she saw it. She just thought it seemed that Ed had made a little preparation, but he was late. She then used the reinforcement release magic on her potion, then threw it towards the Wind Blade. It was a special potion made by mixing the night butterfly flower and gal mushroom, and when mixed using the reinforcement release magic formula, an explosion would occur and have a suppressed emission magic power, and temporarily subdues the products that result from magic formulas. The effect of the explosion even scorched the surrounding area. Elvira then silently asked him, did he know what she meant? A magician who could not use magic anymore. Ed managed to defend himself from the explosion using the big rabbit's body, which he used as a shield, which made it look like he was still okay and came out unscathed. But Elvira just scoffed at that because she felt he was just acting like he was okay. He now couldn't use magic anymore. While they had a fighter on their side, she then told Taylor to attack him immediately. Taylor then immediately rushed forward, but Ed seemed to run when he saw it. Taylor then asked if he was running away. Ed certainly didn't just run away. He then picked up a wooden block nearby, and threw it down to block his path. It also caused the bucket of oil to spill onto the floor. The oil then flowed onto the floor, and when the oil met the fire, a spark then occurred, and the smoldering fire then burned the surrounding area. Based on the smell, Taylor realized that this was oil. Elvira then asked him if he was crazy. They were in the Awfulest Hall. If the fire spread to the corridor, it would definitely cause an accident, and Taylor was still not afraid when he saw it. Whether it was a fire made by magic or a fire spread by oil, he could cut through it all with his elemental slash, since the effect of this reagent wouldn't last more than a few minutes, so before anyone got hurt, he would end it. Seeing him desperately rushing forward, Elvira then worriedly asked him to stop. The window was opened wide enough for all the smoke to escape, and he had removed all the carpets that could catch fire. He also moved everything that was flammable. Based on all that, she knew Ed had planned everything even here. Ed then took out a bow. Seeing that, Elvira then frantically once again tried to stop Taylor, who rushed forward. But it was in vain. Ed then drew his bow towards Taylor, who rushed towards him. Although he was surprised Ed could use a crossbow, but Taylor was confident he could stop it. But he was then surprised, because the target of Ed's shot was not him, but Isla, who was behind him. Seeing an arrow attacking towards her, Isla then immediately frantically tried to stop it, but she could not even use basic defense magic at the moment, because the effect of Elvira's magic formula was still there. Taylor was then very anxious to see that. And in the midst of the anxiety that engulfed them, the arrow suddenly stopped right in front of Isla. The arrow seemed to be held back by some kind of energy ball. The energy ball turned out to come from Elvira, who was using a round-shaped item that released electricity around it. She sighed in relief because it was almost. The item she used was called Claw Hand, a magic machine tool that can release power to pull small objects from afar as long as they are still within sight. But Elvira was then surprised when she carefully looked at the arrow again. She was surprised because the arrow did not have an arrowhead, but instead was wrapped in cloth. She then realized that Ed was still holding back. She then immediately told Taylor to be careful. She was sure Ed must have other tricks that he had not used, but her warning ended in vain, because Taylor did not listen at all. He then attacked Ed using his sword, but his attack could still be resisted by Ed. Ed suddenly heard a noise. Based on the noise, he knew it came from the second floor. He also asked, "Is it time already?" The voice came from Clebius. He anxiously said, "If we stay still, we will all die." The last chapter of Act 2, The Awfulest Hall Mastery Incident. The second floor boss, Wicked Clebius, went on a rampage. Ed then sighed with relief because his role was now over. He then let himself be hit by Taylor's attack. It made him fall and hit the wall, and made the dust fly. Elvira was dumbfounded by the sudden change. She was surprised why Ed was defeated so easily. The whole floor became a mess due to their battle. After defeating him, Taylor then asked him if he was crazy. He must have a reason to go this far. Elvira really felt icky during the battle. It felt like they were just being deliberately played. If he really wanted to prevent them, he could have done it without showing himself and ambushed them by dropping the candle lamp. But instead he was blatantly standing in front of them and blocking them. There was no sign of carelessness during the battle after that. There was something strange here. Seeing him stop talking, Ed then asked if he was done. If they were done, he then told them to stop babbling and immediately go upstairs. They were then confused to hear that he had been blocking them. Taylor then asked what this meant. With the gloomy atmosphere that engulfed the awfulest hall and the patter of rain that fell on the building, Elvira then asked, why did he let them go? Taylor was then surprised to hear her question. He was confused why Elvira said Ed let them go. Elvira ignored Taylor's confusion. Feeling angry, she then said that she couldn't just let this pass without knowing what really happened. Seeing him not answering, Elvira then told him to immediately answer her question. Why did he let them go? But there was absolutely no response from Ed. He just looked at her with an apathetic look. Elvira then got angry at that, and in the middle of their argument, the entrance door suddenly opened, and a girl then entered. Camelia's flower hairpin was something that this girl had painstakingly selected all night. Could someone humiliate her pure love by calling it naive? It might have been delusional, but imagining happy thoughts is up to a person's freedom. But the gap between imagination and reality can sometimes be cruel. The boy she thought would appear at the gazebo in a dashing style was instead attacked by a group of brats and lay there covered in blood. A feeling of anger then fell on her when she saw that. She then asked what they had done. When she read the letter, it would be a lie to say that she didn't suspect that something wrong was going on. He might be caught up in something unexpected, but from his simple life to the way he showed himself during the Glaskin showdown, no matter how big or small his job was, Ed Roth Taylor was someone who had created a certain expectation around him that he could solve any problem. Only after being stabbed in the blind spot, someone hidden in complacency would be able to truly reflect on himself. She had said to him, if he had any problems he could talk to her. At that time, she would definitely help him. However, Ed never asked for her help. He made sure to take Janica out of the Awfulest Hall and left an unusual letter. The reason he had to fight here, to the point of bleeding, was because Janica had been subjected to various disciplinary actions due to the Glaskin incident, so she had to be removed from the battlefield. Janica didn't know what really happened. He had taken care of her so that she wouldn't get caught up in the situation, but instead she was busy taking care of her clothes. She then felt guilty and very angry at those who had done such a bad thing to Ed, not knowing the gravity of the situation that was happening to him. Taylor was even grateful to see her not caught in this situation. Now the Awfulest Hall was being occupied by other students. But he thought it would not end like this just like that. Seeing Ed go so far to stop them, he was sure there must be something else. Seeing Taylor's ignorance, Elvira then immediately told him to realize she was the enemy. Janica then said, you know, what exactly are you doing? I'm not even curious at all. And a very powerful burst of energy suddenly appeared from Janica, which made the floor she stepped on crack. Ed then worriedly called out to her when he saw it. Janica then smiled slightly and asked him not to worry. They could only be stunned when they saw it. Feathers suddenly flew in the room where they were, which then turned into a spirit in the form of a bird. Not only that, Janica also summoned all the spirits she contracted. She then asked Ed to wait for a minute. Elvira broke out in a cold sweat when she saw that, for mid-level elemental spirits. Besides that, if you add the low-level spirits, then it's like an army. She then invited them to run. She realized that there was no way they could get through this. They couldn't even fight Ed, who was a mere fallen noble, and now, their opponent was the best second-year student of the magic department. But Janica certainly wouldn't let them just run away. She then ordered the spirits to attack them, seeing Taylor who was still being stubborn and wouldn't run. Elvira then told her to quickly come to his senses and accept reality, because all the windows were destroyed. She then invited them to go this way. Taylor actually knew that. He had already realized it through Ed. He felt that this occupation of the Oculus Hall was something unusual and suspicious, but he couldn't get the thought, there might be students who were harmed, out of his head. He then told Elvira that he couldn't let her precious potion be damaged. Taylor never gave up in his trials. She then worried when she saw him alone about to face the spirits. It was obvious that Taylor would live a life as a protagonist, therefore, he had to leave while he could. Ed then immediately pulled him away when the spirit's attack was about to hit him. He then told him to listen to him carefully. He would take care of Janica, and told them to rush to the second floor as planned. They were then confused to hear that, after blocking them like that before, now he was telling them to go to the second floor. Ed just said that he changed his mind and once again told them to rush to the second floor, but Elvira underestimated that he wanted to stop the spirits alone. His body was covered in wounds at the moment, but Ed suddenly knocked her head, which made her grimace in pain. Ed then told her to get the reagents. He also apologized for tearing her bag, although she still felt confused, but she then complied, and the three of them then headed to the second floor. Amidst Janica's loss of control, she then found her clarity again when she saw Ed in front of her. She then worriedly asked Ed not to push himself too hard. She also told him to stay by her side. She would finish the rest. He could explain the details to her later. First, she would immediately finish this, then take care of him. But before Janica could continue her words further, Ed suddenly called her. Actually, this kind of action is something impolite, but, while holding both of her shoulders, Ed then said that he was fine, so she didn't need to overdo it. Janica was stunned for a moment, then blushed because of that. Janica felt very embarrassed when his hands were on her shoulders. But Ed was completely unaware of that. He then asked Janica to first get rid of the spirits first. The wind was too strong, so he had trouble standing up. Hearing that, Janica then immediately agreed to that. She felt guilty for making Ed have trouble standing up. She also apologized for her behavior. She felt she had done something stupid. Right after Janica got rid of the spirits, the strong wind that hit the whole room suddenly disappeared, and the glass that was flying in the air then fell to the floor. They were then surprised to see that. They were surprised that Ed could really overcome Janica. Ed then sent a signal to them to immediately go upstairs. Maybe there wasn't much time left, but Janica was then surprised when she saw him suddenly fall on the floor. She then worriedly called him. After that, Janica then asked him why he never said anything and got hurt. She had told him to come and talk to her if something happened. Hearing her worries, Ed only said that this time there was a reason. Next time, he promised to tell her everything. When seeing Ed's completely battered state, Janica felt that they had really gone overboard. There should be no reason to attack someone to this extent. She didn't know exactly what happened, but next time when they met, she would be very angry at them. She then asked Ed to promise not to get hurt again. Ed then replied yes. He also thanked her for worrying about him. This was a little different from what he had originally planned, but in the end he had done his part as the first floor boss. Now, he could rest and take care of the work in his camp. And just as he was about to stand up, Janica suddenly said to him, while he was sitting in the rose garden, she saw a very large horse-drawn carriage. It passed by so fast that he couldn't see it clearly, but he saw that there was a golden crown on it. Ed's pupils instantly shrank after hearing that. The golden crown, it was the symbol of the elf store, Lortel's adoptive father and the enemy who killed her biological father. The fake boss who was about to leave the stage after being stabbed in the back by Lortel in the events that happened after the residents of Oculus Hall. The battle for the Sage's Scroll, the Golden King Elt, the fact that he arrived earlier than expected, it meant that something unexpected must have happened. This was completely beyond the scope of his knowledge. The patter of rain was still so heavy outside and soaked the horse carriage that was traveling towards Oculus Hall. In the hallway of the 5th floor of Oculus Hall, Lortel quietly observed the horse carriage from behind the window. She then said to Elris that she was dumped. She must also know that the person involved is rather nasty and cruel when you first see him. Hearing that, Elris then asked if she meant Ed, the person they met at the camp last time. Lortel confirmed it. Elris was a little surprised Ed was the kind of person she liked. She just found out, Lortel said. He has a decent appearance, but that doesn't mean anything. The smell she smelled from Elris, she could also smell it from him, but he ended up making a lot of emotional comments. Then, he finally threw it all away without hesitation. People like them live by hearing those words. Elris was the head maid at Ophilus Hall, who had served as a veteran maid for over 20 years. At the age of 15, when she didn't know anything yet, she started her career as an apprentice maid. She later became the manager at Ophilus Hall, as she was known for her abilities that far exceeded her age. Therefore, this was where Lortel invested the most effort. The most amount of money was spent to break Elris' honesty. The amount was enough to leave a big hole, but for Lortel, the expense was not wasted at all. Because she was glad she had Elris by her side, she had seen many people who would break their own beliefs because of being attracted to gold coins, the same race. Only when facing them, she could be free from this loneliness. Among the rows of merchants who risked their lives for a single gold coin or a basket among the slums, it seemed that it was because she lived a life where she would be stabbed to death if she didn't stab someone in the back first. But, Lortel then said to him, at this time, Will Rain, the lower-ranked student representative, would occupy the fourth-floor management office. If he gave up possession of the defense magic circle at the right time, then, one way or another, Ophilus Hall would be destroyed. Regardless of her unfortunate past and the circumstances that pushed him into a corner, this person was clearly a villain, and the black curtain behind the scenes, the situation seemed to be going according to plan, so she decided to stay here alone. In the storage room, she had to act like a good student, who was just afraid of the situation that was happening and didn't know what was going on. That's why she would hide here. Elris could only sigh at that. What a pitiful human being. She then took out her sword from its sheath. She said she would tell her something. She then pointed her sword at Lortel's neck, and said that she was not someone like her, a girl her age, had never loved anyone, or had someone like a family who could open her heart, and would die in solitude.